So I'm here with John Seeley-Brown, our Lifetime Achievement Award winner this evening, and just like to talk to you a little bit about some of the reasons why we're giving you this award tonight. I think
a
for us,
wonderful award at that.
oh well, we're just very, very honoured
Yes.
that you've come to accept it. I mean, for us, one of the really key points was obviously that you've had a lifetime with technology, but you remain one of our sort of most far-sighted commentators in many ways. And one of the contributions that I think has sort of really lasted is this idea of moving from an economy of stocks to an economy of flows. And I wondered if you could just explain that. I know not everybody's familiar with that, but what's the basic thinking behind that?
Well, the basic thinking, I think, it could be simply said that so much of the 20th century and before was based on a push-type model. Our education was a push-type model. The way we do scalable efficiency in the corporate world is we build up huge amounts of stuff that we can do very efficiently, and then we push that out in some optimal and semi-optimal way to customers. That's why advertising is there and so on and so forth. What would it mean, actually, if, given the networked age, it's getting harder and harder to predict ahead of time what people are going to want, what people need to know. What would it mean to reverse this entire game from a world of push to a world of pull, or a world of managing stocks to participating in flows of ideas, flows of knowledge, and so on and so forth. And so just think about it in terms of education. You know, today what really matters is when I get stuck doing something, can I pull information from anywhere in the net or other people to help me get unstuck? That information coming into me is now situated on the problem that I'm working on. Therefore, it means stuff to me right away. I take that knowledge, I put it into action. So now I have hand and head working together. I personalize it. It either works or not. If it doesn't, I pull some more. It's kind of, you might call it advanced notions of deep tinkering going on. And so I take whatever I need, and I pull whatever I need, and I can put it into play right away. This completely turns the learning equation around.
Yeah.
And it makes everything much more personal, much more meaningful. And it makes it very possible now to pull information from the world rather than have some authority decide 10 years ago what I must learn to be credentialed and so on. So it's a much more, if you wish, mobile and fluid type view of both how we need to work and also how we need to organize, and how we actually may look for new types of strategies in terms of how do I kind of now have not scalable efficiency, which is what almost all corporations use as their fundamental strategy, to the whole notion of scalable learning. So, you know, if our expected lifetimes or the half-life of a skill is shrunk from, 40 years to like 5 years, it does mean that almost all of our real learning is going to happen after formal schooling. And so we have to look at ways to make the informal learning incredibly powerful.
So it seems to me that this is something that individuals maybe have adopted almost without knowing about it. But would you say that our institutions have adapted as well or as quickly, or do you, because this is obviously something, again, that you write about a lot.
Now, our institutions are very, very hesitant to adapt this. Our universities, by the way, are some of the slowest.
I think I'd agree,
in some ways. And so it's in a curious sort of way, if you go back, if you look at a child from 0 to 5, or 0 to 6, or 0 to 7, they completely understand how to play in the world.
Yeah.
They pull things, they try things out, they're fearless, basically. And then what happens is we send them to school, and they suddenly learn how to live in a box. What we now have to do is to open that box up again. And I like to think about, one of my heroes is, obviously, Montessori.
Oh, really? Of course, the schooling systems.
And several other variants of her movement. And that never caught on. The interesting question is if in the internet age, we can learn how to scale the Montessori notions. If we can scale what John Dewey was talking about, instead of having an artificial task of building clubhouses, can we actually say, no, every kid can try to find a way to hook their own interest and pull stuff into it. So I think this whole sense of maybe converting education to focusing on user-centered learning, we might call connected learning, where we now got to connect the kind of the student's interest to the resources and then in some sense puts sugar coating if you need on it in terms of some of the academic work. But if you can actually invert this thing, it has tremendous effect to being able to say, now I can start to develop what you might call a disposition. A disposition is of expecting if I don't know something, I can find it.
Yeah.
Or a disposition of saying like, it's an adventure.
Yeah.
So, what's so characteristic, as you know better than anybody in the internet age, is things are changing all the time. Most people are frightened by change. What happens if we can turn fear of change into an adventure?
The possibilities are endless, you would think.
They are endless.
Yeah.
Okay? And
Yeah.
that is, in some sense, the simplest way to think about moving from stocks of fixed assets to say, no, I want to participate in flows.
Yeah.
In fact, the metaphor I like to use is we're moving from stocks to embodied cognition, very much like a whitewater kayaker is doing, which really connects, hand and head in very powerful ways. But think about how do you listen if you are a whitewater kayaker. You put your paddle in the water. You're reading everything about what's happening under the water, on the water, around the water.
Looking ahead.
So you're learning how to read context and listen to the pushback of what's really happening. And that kind of participation with the world as an act of embodied cognition is a whole different view than just a Homo sapien, I think, therefore I am.
Yeah.
It's much more I act, and through action I engage and learn and create meaning.
Yeah. So from what you're saying, and obviously from what I've read of your work, I always think that you're sort of challenging us to adapt, challenging us to move ahead in our environment and look at the sort of the network world that we live in and make more of it, make better of it. Do you think we're better off looking at where we are, or do you think we're better off looking, to the future, if you like? I mean, it seems to me that we're never going to catch up, so shouldn't we almost just sort of stop trying to do so and just sort of look and see where we should be going in a few years' time?
Yeah, I think actually the answer is both.
Okay.
One of the major changes I think I really helped make at Xerox Palo Alto Research Center is the one who brought in anthropologists, sociologists, philosophers, artists, and said, the technology part of this game now is the easy part.
Yeah.
The real question is how do organizations, how do institutions, how do individuals actually start to understand how to work with this technology, not against it? How does it amplify identity and so on and so forth? That is a profoundly socio-technical problem. Okay? So if you don't start there, you're already going to be in trouble.
Already lost.
But that's not sufficient. I think what really happens is you have to also start looking at how does identity get constructed, where does value get created, where do the aesthetics come into play. And the irony to me is as we move into this super intense technological world, I think we can now argue pretty convincingly that the humanities may be more important than ever. It's kind of like these networks of intimacy that are now global. Now this pocket is talking to this pocket, talking to this pocket. What is, in a way, how do we actually start to listen with humility? And that's beyond socio-technical. And I think that our challenge now is to take a whole new view of, you might say, a new form of design, much more like real studios work in terms of understanding how to work with the pushback, how to think about context as much as content. We know everything about how to crafting content, but we almost know nothing about crafting context. And I think in today's age, the technologies that you guys are studying here that we build, is a contextual technology, not a content technology. And it's being talked about, and legislation views it as content. And the storing, distribution, creation of content. Not the fact that, for example, a serious blog site actually creates context that actually shapes meaning. These are the new challenges we have, but if you don't know where we've come from, you don't quite know what the gap really is between some kind of enlightenment here to the complexities of living in a truly, profoundly interconnected, rapidly changing world that is breaking every status quo you can imagine. Disruption is the name of the game. And how does that done? How do you kind of think about working with that world so you know how to work with the status quo, honor the status quo, but also bring change in a meaningful way?
The ethos of your work very much underlies everything we do here at OII, so we're just really thrilled to have you here and hopefully have a chance to talk more. But thank you so much, John, for the interview. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you. It's a great honor. Okay.